Welcome to this new season of Back to the City. Today I'm joined by my friend Drew from The Lakes.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. It's our second interview, but our first in-person interview. The first one was during the pandemic when I was stuck in England. That was you and Elizabeth.
Yes, yeah.
I was just watching that interview again, and at the end of that interview, we were focusing on a particular song, and there was a lyric in the song about one-word answers. Does that ring a bell?
What's the lyric again? I'm trying to think. It's from the song Infinity.
Our conversation back then ended with some reflection on, at one end of the spectrum, these one-word answers to questions where there's perhaps a lack of playful co-creativity. And then at the other end of the spectrum, the process of working with your friends to create, then Unforgettable Cheer. And then you referred to the idea of going back to something someone had said earlier, applying yes and then allowing that to flourish. So I thought we could do something like that.
Ooh,
kind of picking up where we left off.
Yeah, let's do it.
Some of the main things that we were focusing on back then were joy, cheer, this yes and improv ethos with a lot of the members of The Lakes having a background in jazz.
Yes.
What are your initial thoughts on how that ethos of improv and play continues beyond the previous record in the new record, Heaven is a Silent Disco?
There is a lot of play in Heaven is a Silent Disco. In a way, it's almost more collaborative than the first one. Because a lot of the first album I was writing on my own. I had just come back from a trip abroad and I was thinking, I was just like in a very creative spirit. And so I was sitting down, I was writing a bunch of songs immediately, and I had a little bit of time to just like start producing parts, and I wanted to be really specific about the bass, making sure it doesn't have any like intervals that were colliding with my voice, and likewise with the keys and guitar, and everyone had space and pocket and everything like that, which is something that actually turns out people can just do on their own. But at the time I was like, I need to write all this out. I need to make sure everything's specific. And from there, we kind of grew and flourished the parts together. With this new album though, I definitely just kind of came to the band with a lead sheet. So I'd just be saying like, here's the form of the song, chords above, here's the melody that I'm playing. Let's kind of create an atmosphere with this. Let's create a song. And I think a perfect example of that too that I can think of is Not So So Anymore, which is the third song and the first single we released from the album back in August.
It was the set closer as well when I just recently saw you at the 7th Street Entry. And we were all singing along, Tangled Up in Blue.
It's good to give people
instructions. Yeah, absolutely. So that was, so your initial point is that it's more collaborative.
I would say so, yeah.
And then in that instance at 7th Street Entry, you're encouraging the audience, including me, to sing along, hence even more collaborative.
Exactly.
I need you to say something with us. It's gonna come up quick. You're just gonna go, tangled up in blue. Say it with me. 1, 2, here we go. Tangled up in blue.
I started that one just with, I love adding a lot of bass parts, so there were like 3 layered bass parts that were the foundation of the song, but other than that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I had the chords and melody and pretty much all the lyrics, but I didn't really know how the song was going to sound, and I kind of just put it in front of the band and we played it, and it kind of turned into like the pop punk type style song that it is now, and it's great. I feel so good that we all just cohesively decided to do that.
It does have a really powerful pop punk feel. The opening of the record, Dare to Be Bogus, are those power chords? It sounds almost
It's a lot of power chords.
Yeah, it sounds like
Nirvana-esque.
Yeah. So how did, so there is to my ear, the cheer and the joy of Unforgettable Cheer remains. But there is a kind of fierceness. There's a new fierceness, I feel, which is kind of those opening power chords and the pop punkness.
Yes.
Do you agree? And what thoughts do you have about this the punkiness or fierceness, which we discover in the new record?
I mean, it definitely stemmed from just ending a like very long-term relationship, and just coming out of that, feeling not necessarily anger. I don't think that's it, but just being upset with circumstance.
Yes.
And so the start of the album reflects the kind of ending of Unforgettable Cheer as an era and the start of Heaven is a Silent Disco, and it progressively becomes a much happier, much more authentic album. Since all the songs on Heaven is a Silent Disco, at least the ones that are much more positive, are all about my fiance, and so it's
with
like
whom you had your first date just an hour or so. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Before our Zoom interview.
Exactly.
Interview.
Yeah, I literally came from that date to do the interview with
What was the date? What did you do on your date?
We went over to Bauhaus. We went over to Bauhaus for a few drinks, and it was just like, it was super fun, and we found out we knew all the same people, and it was definitely one of those situations where you're just thinking, why didn't we meet beforehand?
So there's an instance where one finds oneself encountering someone else, and there's a context where there's a sense of flow and playfulness, and there one can play yes and, it's easy to co-create. But I feel what you were emphasizing about the end of a previous relationship and that informing some of these songs.
Right.
That comes through in Nothing About You screams love and grace to the rest of us.
For
what it's worth, I think I'm finally free. And I think that there's an important saying no to something that's happening there. So we were talking about the yes and ethos before. To me, this fierceness, and you tentatively referenced anger. For me, anger, I think, has to do with awareness of boundaries. And a sense of there being a lack of respect. So for me, I think anger is a helpful emotion that can alert us to the fact that something is awry.
I mean, that's such a good point, because it's like any emotion that you're experiencing is valid. It's just how you use it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
There's a book called Emotional Agility that I really like, where there's the metaphor of the emotions as being like beacons. So an anger in particular is a beacon that will be informing me of perhaps a perception of lack of respect, that kind of thing. And I think that is harnessed, that energy is harnessed and coherently participates to the vibe, the ethos of Heaven is a Silent Disco.
And I think it definitely contrasts the start versus the end of the album. Like if you're listening to the last song and like it's not like playing on CD or something like that, and it starts back at the beginning, it's a very stark difference, isn't it? I mean, like the mountain you've climbed by the end of the album, it's like all of a sudden you're just thrown off of it.
And suddenly we're done with words and language, because there's a lot of at the end of the album, right.
And
is that intentional? What is the significance of suddenly being done with words?
Well, I talk too much, and so I think that purposely ending the album more as an instrumental allows people to project themselves into the emotional space of the album. And so if you're just experiencing Oz, and what I really like about that ending is the main synth melody that happens at the beginning is thrown into a different harmonic context at the end, and eventually, it causes like a little bit of tension. That's where all the ahs are happening with like the different harmonies and stuff. But then that melody, pops in during that, and it continues as we return back to the beginning. And I think that's just like a really nice reflection of the album. There is that like moderate tension. It resolves itself, and through there's just like a single melody that carries itself all the way through, which could be thought of as the listener or the experience of loving someone or yourself or whatever.
Something that came up in the previous interview and that's coming up again now, I think, is the idea of music as a medium for, previously we were saying unification.
Yeah.
We were talking about dancing before.
Yeah.
We were even discussing how more brain regions are kind of called into play by music than by most other activities. And the importance, and in terms of healing, the call to rhythmically move one's body can be liberating to kind of push beyond staleness and kind of the sense of being stuck. We're continuing to explore important, I think, philosophical questions about the role of music, and for what it's worth, I think I'm finally free, like the role that music can play in fostering sustainable joy.
Yeah, it's funny because, bringing up a point you were talking about earlier, you're not maybe going to be reading a book and dancing.
Right.
But it would be like a very good Yoko Ono instruction, wouldn't it? Like, read this and dance to every syllable or something.
Yes.
Like, so maybe we should all be trying that more. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But what's nice about music is it does give your brain conversation. It gives it's communication through words. It's communication through pulse and rhythm and tempo. And it is dance, it is art, in terms of like a visual art, it's sonic art. It's kind of like an amalgamation of all these different mediums that people work with, which is what's so enticing about it and I think makes it so powerful.
In the second track, Laughing as a Symbol, we're dancing in my head, we're dancing in my bed. I love bed dancing.
Oh, it's
Fiona
great.
and I often listen to music, and one can dance anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You got good springs, right?
Yeah.
Then you're able to get a little bit better bounce. Doesn't hurt your shins as much. No shin splints.
We could bring this conversation about music and rhythm and healing, unite that with what we were initially recognizing about saying no to something, like asserting nothing about you screams love and grace to the rest of us. That same saying no, I think, relates to the lyric in Laughing as a Symbol, I know my needs and I'd die on a hill for each.
Right.
So you referenced self-love before. I think the record is a testament to getting to know oneself, getting to know what one truly needs, what is nourishing.
Knowing self-worth is definitely a tricky, beast to tackle, isn't it? But I think that's a lot of what I was going for on this album. And, there's the argument of, you can't be in love until you love yourself. I really don't think that's true. Sometimes you do just need someone to, encourage you along the way. And, going into this new relationship, I definitely had to figure out a lot of ways for myself to feel at ease and my needs to be met and whatever that might be, and just having that confidence going into it, knowing what stabilizes me helps anyone stabilize the other person in the partnership. And so I think that's one thing to go on about. But the other thing is just you're mentioning dancing earlier, and I don't know, I didn't feel like I could really dance ever when I was growing up. I don't know, it's especially, just growing up as a guy in middle school or high school, you're not I confidently feel like I can dance in front of other people. That takes a lot of courage, and I did not have that. But now it's just, right. And it's just it sucks that that's the case, because it's so fun to dance, and it's so liberating, and it's so healthy. And the way I listen to music, I typically find a band that I become obsessed with for a year, and sometimes there's duplicates, but the band that I was absolutely nonstop listening to is the B-52s.
Oh, I love the B-52s.
I love them so much, and they're just so fantastic. And they I definitely see DeLakes in the B-52s of just being weirdos trying to experiment with different things and just put on a weird show and kind of invite people into another world. But they're ultimately just a weird dance band that just has great grooves. And I wanted to encompass that a lot. I wanted to try to bring more of a dance party energy to the DeLake sets. And that was a lot of the inspiration for it. And also just because I don't go to the gym, so I should probably move somehow. So, but yeah, just allowing myself to dance in front of people, just allowing myself to dance really in front. And it's that's brought a lot of self-confidence, because it's it doesn't have to be good. You just have to do it. You know?
Exactly. Most of my exercise is dancing.
Good. Yep. I was just doing that a lot. It's like, that's why I want to go to more local bands shows this year, is like, it's so fun to just like dance and groove, and it helps every audience member in the band. Like, it's all like biofeedback stuff, right? Where it's like, you see people having fun, you're going to have fun, and then the band's having fun, and the band's already having fun, so now you're having fun. Yeah, it's so.
Yeah, the plot will thicken now, because there's an interesting moment in There've Been So Many Times.
Yeah,
one of the songs, There've Been So Many Times. I've danced with non-contenders, always trying to sound profound, but they'll fuck you and they'll leave you in an instant.
They do.
So how does that thicken the plot? We've just been imagining a context where, say, the band is playing and there's good vibes and everyone's dancing together, but in this instance, we're reflecting, or you're reflecting, on dancing with someone who, yes, in that moment, it's cheerful.
Yeah.
And there's this awareness that it's fleeting. How does that moment in this song complicate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a reflection on earlier times of just, wandering around, meeting random people, becoming enamored by people. It's supposed to demonstrate the importance and significance of my fiance, of just being like, yeah, like, you'll meet a lot of people and you'll have fun with a lot of people, but your truest feelings might only be had for one person. Because I think I'm definitely like sappy in the sense that I really want to believe in like soulmates, or that there's at least you got a lot of soulmates, and that you'll come across those people and it's important to find you. Like, there's friends of mine who are soulmates. There's my fiance who's soulmates. It's all that type of energy. But
absolutely,
yeah, that line is just supposed to kind of reflect meeting and finding a lot of people and realizing that we're all pretty much going through the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel that there is an important oscillation that's happening in the record. There are these moments of feeling free, letting oneself go, and then on the other hand, there's this returning to introspection, knowing my needs, and being willing to die on a hill for each of them.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of whiplash throughout the album, because I think most emotions aren't chronological, right? It's not just like, I am sad and now I am happy. It's like, I wish it could be that simple, but like, as you're growing and developing, you're essentially processing everything that's happened to you, and a lot of times you process that through really good things happening. If all of a sudden it's like, wow, this person really understands me in a way that I haven't experienced before, that might unlock times in your past where you haven't felt understood or had your needs met. And that can unlock a lot of uncomfortable things, but dishing them out and just processing, going through all of them, that's the healthy steps you need to take. But I think that's kind of why the album does have this ebb and flow of being really optimistic, feeling trapped, being really in love, feeling hurt, or just like overcoming things. There's a lot of overlap with it. It doesn't just have a clean cutoff.
Yeah. More, would you say more so than the previous record?
Yeah, the previous record I think was exactly what I wanted to do with it, which was just have nothing but joy. I love the idea of a plot or a movie or a book or an album or something that's just devoid of conflict, because I think we rely on it too much as a narrative. So and every time I've talked to people, it weirdly gets people very agitated, saying like,
we need something to happen.
I think people think it sounds naive.
Right.
You can think of that with like the counterculture movement later on in the 60s turning into what people deemed as being very vapid or naive, like I was saying earlier. And I just don't think that's true. I think a lot of times it's the simplest answer that works best. So I wanted to create something very simple and very loving and very joyful, and not really have any conflict, because sometimes we just need that. And I think especially within queer media, there isn't really a lot of representation with that. There's more so now. There's plenty of novels and shows and everything that's representing positive things happening in queer relationships. But, up until a few years ago, most of it was, unrequited love or someone dying or whatever it may be. And it's like, what if we just had something that worked out? So, But I guess what I was going to eventually say on that is just the first album was kind of a one-sided coin where it's like, this is what you're looking at and this is all there is, don't flip it over. It's just supposed to be a happy, joyful, loving experience. And there's a lot more complexity in Heaven as a Silent Disco, which is really exciting to dabble with, because I was looking back on the last album. I was curious. I was like, I don't think I wrote any songs in a minor key signature. Well, it wasn't until this album that I started dabbling with more of a sonic palette.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And at the center of our conversation before, we focused on the lyric. I never try to feel anything less than glee, but nothing beats the serenity of when the feeling comes back to me. The lyric that I think is interesting to bring into conversation with that central lyric in our previous conversation is in Not So Anymore.
Yeah, not so anymore,
yeah,
right?
Not so anymore. Never fond of being sad, even though it seems to be our truest and our most defaulted mode.
Yeah.
So let's burn some shit, which I think, and dance. Burn some
There's
shit,
some more
I think
dancing,
relates
yeah.
to the opening lyric on the record.
La Notte dei Donati. It's like an Italian horror film
Yeah,
from the
The Night
70s.
of
I
the
love the
Damned.
artistic style of those. Yeah.
From 1971.
Right.
And their letters are received from princes.
Yeah.
Not the spoiler alert, at the end and a letter is received and then it's burnt.
Yeah, the symbolism of that. And it's like, I don't even fully... I don't even know if any one interpretation of that is the right one, but I guess what I saw of it is just rejecting the prophecies that people push onto us in a way where it's like, if I'm writing to you, telling you something, and I don't necessarily agree with that, if I burn the note, then whatever, it's gone.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's the same fierce no, which relates to the knowing my needs and dying on a hill for each. So this story, something is projected on you, and you're like, no.
Not my story, not my narrative. Goodbye.
So that is the starting point. That sets the scene. I think that's really powerful, because then there are these references not only to dancing but also to burning things throughout.
It's going to come out that I'm actually an arsonist. It turns out, yeah. Oh my God, you figured it out. Well, cuff me right now.
So let's burn some shit and dance around the flames, just like we used to before we all got this old.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. On the one hand, we used to dance before we got this old.
Yeah.
And there is this call, especially with the live performance, and Joni and Kim, the performance artists. I have some footage from your 7th Street Entry show.
Oh, excellent.
With Joni and Kim engaging with the crowd. I'm simultaneously capturing some footage and participating, limboing.
Oh, you got to limbo with them. Oh,
yeah,
my God.
Exactly. But so there is an invitation to engage in childlike play.
Yeah.
And there's also this idea that as kids, before we got old, we would dance. And it's both of our experiences that when we were young, we felt less comfortable and courageous to get up and dance.
Yeah.
It seems like a weird thing to do. What are people going to think?
What are people going to think? Exactly, right?
And the broader palette of emotions and the broader sonic palette, I think, relates to evolution and growth, and there is a really confident maturity, I think, to this record. So what are your thoughts on childlike play and childlike play on the one hand, and then the sense that there is this, in a sense, like the dancing and the playing that you do now as a grown adult is more free, more than perhaps when you were, maybe not as a very young child, but once.
Right.
What thoughts do you have about maturity in play?
I think it kind of goes back into age as a number versus age as a mentality, and every body is different, and I guess depending how you think of it, I'm either scared or uplifted by the idea of being able to choose how you act as an adult, like that is all in your control in a way, depending on how you set your life up. So the lyric of like, let's burn some shit and dance around the flames just like we used to before we all got so old, is a little tongue-in-cheek because it's like, before we all got so old, you know, most of us aren't even past the halfway point yet. And even then it's like, that's when you can like really start having some like confidence and like knowing what the world's about, as long as you hold on to that. But I think that's the key, is you have to hold on to that knowledge that we have as kids, that people, especially adults, don't like to admit, is that kids are oftentimes smarter in a lot of ways than adults are, because they still have this sense of joy, this sense of cheerfulness that, or at least you'd hope that, you know, is lost in adulthood because of our responsibilities. And so DeLakes Lakes is very much escapism of adulthood, or rather it's encouraging people to think of adulthood in a different way, you know. So the play aspect is definitely prominent in our live shows. It's going to be more prominent in our third album that we've like loosely started working on already. And just like finding different ways to tap into that spirit and to tap into that energy through live shows where we're having, you know, like we were talking about earlier, we had like an alien and Mozart get married to each other. We've done just like really goofy, like strip teases that are just like extremely like playful and funny.
Yeah.
But you know, all of that is supposed to just draw out that play that's still locked in us.
Yes.
And allow people that escapism, or allow people the acceptance to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm thinking again about the dancing with the non-contenders as a contrast to co-creating with the other band members and the performance artists. You are part of the band. You think of them as part of the band.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Joni's sang with us before. Kim has like come up with like different melody and lyric ideas and things like that. So yeah, they're definitely part of the band.
I think it's really special what you're choosing to have the band be. I would choose Your Smile in a Crowded Room as the opening lyric, and not So anymore. And I think choice and choosing this broad palette of emotions, and knowing that it's through doing that that there is this more sustainable joy.
Yeah, it definitely is a choice, isn't it? I think a lot about how performance, when you're doing a live performance, I've been talking to this with a lot of students recently, just thinking about, because a few of them are starting to perform out.
So music students, you teach guitar,
I teach different,
bass, cello,
like so many
ukulele,
different
mandolin.
instruments. Yeah, like all of them. Oh my gosh, a lot of songwriting, producing now, which is really cool. What's that?
At the Rogers School of Music?
That's one of them, Rogers School of Music, also at Twin Cities Music School. I'm there Monday through Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, Rogers, and private lessons on the weekend. It's just crazy, but it's like super fun, so it's whatever. But like,
so you're saying you've been talking to some of the students who are.
Thank you. Yeah, there a lot of the students I've been talking to have been wondering about performance and what that's like, because it is kind of scary at first when you're first doing it, right? And I was talking to them about how it's a much more visual way of performing than a musical one, right? You are supposed to have a good musical product, but that's just supposed to be expected. You know, if people are listening to your music or have heard a clip somewhere, they're like, cool, I like that, I'm gonna go see that. Well, okay, if you're gonna do that, then you should probably make sure that what people are looking at is really enticing and really exciting and thought-provoking, or just weird, whatever you want it to be. But it's kind of the philosophy that I think we take, is that at any given moment there should be something happening that's sort of funny. Like it should be, you know, the performance artists, if we've done things in the past where we've been in outdoor spaces and everyone's gotten sparklers. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, everyone in the audience has sparklers, or like, yeah, people come out and there'll be like games like Limbo, or like pin the tail on the centaur or something like that. But going through all of that, thinking about performance as a more visual medium kind of forces us to do more with our live shows than just what the music provides, which is also supposed to be top-notch and as exciting as possible. And it's the challenge that we try to give ourselves, is how can it sound as awesome and fun as possible, and how can it look and feel as fun and awesome as possible?
Yeah, well, you're rising to that challenge. You're
Oh,
doing,
good.
it's working.
We're trying our best. Yeah, we have a high standard. But
And you were sharing a bit earlier that on the third record, it seems like, were you saying that there's even more commitment to play? The play ethos is even more central. So could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, what I want to do is I want it to be a much more group writing experience. We're going to definitely tap into some more B-52 vibes, some Jamiroquai vibes.
Ah, yes.
And I want it to just be very, I want the lyrics to be kind of absurd in a relatable way, not absurd in an alienating way, which I've done in solo projects, which is kind of fun. That's very self-indulgent, which there's no problem with that. But at this point, I want this to be a project that anyone can tap into and feel like they have an ownership of it or like they're part of it.
It's inviting.
Yeah, I want it to be very inviting in a very goofy way because I think, with the, not to get too political, but just the commercialization and monopolization of everything, we don't have as much choice as we think we do. And so there is kind of one exact way that we should be living out our lives and one path that we should live out our lives and one way that we should have conversations when we get together with our friends once a week. And I want to just challenge that a little bit, which it's very silly to think through me writing music, you're going to experience a change of heart. And it's no, that's not how that works. And no one person can do that. But just encouraging more people to do that, I guess, opens up the door for more possibilities.
Absolutely, yeah. We are all constantly inviting one another to engage with each other in diverse ways.
Yeah.
And you're very intentional about the fact that that's what you're doing when you're writing and particularly performing music.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's important. Yeah. Charm is a word that comes up at least 3 times in Heaven is a Silent Disco. It's in New Sun, Let's Become Wicked, and Electric Spring. So in New Sun, the hint was lost, his charm suave, it only works on guys his age. So I think, again, related to the fierce snow and knowing one's needs and being willing to die on the hill for them, we can recognize, okay, here is the suave, charming person, but
he doesn't even know it.
Yes. Then in Let's Become Wicked, there is concern that apparently my charm can no longer save me.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
no more excuses, right?
And then Electric Spring, until you hooked me in with charm.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the movie, The Night of the Damned, where there's witchcraft. And,
oh, sure,
there's the risk of being charmed.
Enchantment.
Yeah,
the risk of being charmed, true, yeah.
So I think that's an important part of the narrative or the story that's presented to us in Heaven is a Silent Disco. Managing in this context where it is so easy to become charmed or enchanted, committing to various things, playing, but also being to self-love and self-care, and remaining connected enough with all the different aspects of oneself to A, know what one's needs are, and B, fight for them. Do you have any thoughts on that hypothesis of mine that the record kind of presents a scene or a context where there's all of these ways in which we could be charmed in ways that might lead us to lose a sense of self.
Yeah.
But there are also ways that we can double down on being true to ourselves and authentic.
Because you can receive charm in a good way or a bad way, and you can give charm in a good way or a bad way. And I guess, having thought about it that way, I didn't even think about it that way until now, is there's elements of characters giving out charm in an enticing way, in a deceitful way, and then also in an extremely authentic way. And I think, with New Sun, New Sun is a really fun one to perform because it's all just made up for the most part. and it's just supposed to be this idea of like some clueless guy finding out he's gay by accidentally going to a lesbian bar and like having them tell you, because it's like, of course women have to do all the work, right? So it's like in that song he's putting out all this charm, suave energy and stuff like that for it to be just on, like ears that won't hear it, and then like coming to that realization of where that charm has actually been directed to. And I think in Let's Become Wicked, that's kind of an ownership of my own responsibility of like, you can't just charm your way out of any situation. You have to recognize, your, you have to recognize your effect on people and take ownership of it. Mm-hmm. And so you can't just charm your way out of it, And so that's like kind of a negative charm in a way of like throwing charm out as a defense mechanism. Mm. And then in Electric Spring, that's referencing my fiance and just like the charm that he immediately brought to me the first time we met, aka the first time we did an interview.
Yes. But that was a good day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a great day. Yeah, so it just seeing charm through a lot of different perspectives and different lenses, having that both take on the role of, adulthood responsibilities and also charm as childhood play, as like this like very innocent way of just showing your love can be very charming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, on the one hand, there's this kind of manipulative charm, and then on the other hand, there's a charm which feels very different and is connected to love.
Yes. Yeah.
And in the song Four Steps, it seems to me to be kind of looking back at the previous relationship in the context of present one, which sheds a light.
Yeah.
And the key lyric there is, I'm at the point where I don't need to think about you because Cupid's power has shook your disease out of my core.
Yes.
In that movie that's referenced in the opening lyric, there's this strange disease.
Yeah.
There are references to disease and breaking through to health throughout the record.
Yeah.
Could you expand a bit on this idea of just the experience of the charm that's related to love?
Yeah, or how it's like the cure for...
Being the cure. Yeah.
In a way it is, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of like, we feel our emotional pain very physically a lot of the time, right? That can cause, like stress can cause physical illness and whatever, but putting that into a very like a highly dramatic way of like, a breakup or like whatever it is a good way of demonstrating how it feels through, what's the word I'm looking for? Not, the melodrama, right? But like the disease part representing the feelings of an empty relationship, and then how do you escape that? And through this album, apparently the cure is charm, and so like openly embracing that cure. So I guess it's kind of an overcoming feeling, right? Of like, I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to feel this disease anymore. And so like I have to seek out a cure, and letting the cure come to you in the form of someone who has the answers, right?
Absolutely,
has the charm, right?
Yeah, and I think we were talking about choice, and one thing that that in my experience like helps lead to more sustainable, meaningful connection and joy is choosing one's company. In Four Steps, on the one hand, every person is a mirror, and on the other hand, thank God I'm not your mirror.
Yeah.
So there's this sense that yes, of course, like humans, we're projecting things on one another all the time, whether it's positive and or negative qualities. Like if back to like when I'm a young teenager and I don't feel comfortable dancing, I might think that I might
That means
point at someone else.
everyone thinks that about me. Yeah, yeah.
Right, and be like, look at my hero there. Like I might look up to someone who can dance.
Yeah.
And I would project this quality that could. Yeah, it is to develop in me, but I project it on someone else. And of course, all the time, like we project negative qualities, like if I don't reckon with my shadow.
Why do we do that? It's so absurd. It's like, because the mirror line is like, it's just trying to reference that, like, we're all pretty much going through the same 5 things in life to various degrees. Like, every human is extremely different and unique, and at the same time, like, we should really admit the fact that, like, there's really only a few things that are really going through us at any given moment, like job troubles, health problems, relationship troubles, blah blah blah. Okay, on the opposite side, like having a really good time out with friends, getting married, getting a promotion, like whatever. It's like, okay, we're all just reflections of ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that line is supposed to be a dig of like, thank God I'm not your mirror, right? It was like, we're all reflections of ourselves, but at least I don't reflect you. Right.
Yeah, and I think that relates to the idea of burn the note, hide the crime. Because again, that's the sense of, okay, I'm being cast as this character in this other person's story.
Sure, yeah,
in a way that on some level maybe serves them, but that's
exactly
not...
anything to help you get through, right?
But there is a healthier alternative, and the lyrics are kind of pointing towards that, but then the lyrics is particularly in the live context enacting that and inviting others to participate in enacting that and see how it feels, and then it's contagious. It's like the joy is contagious, just like kind of anxiety is too. Related to that, I think this idea of being okay with things not going as planned is there's a lot. We keep on coming back to that in this record too. In Stasis on Track, something's not right with your playful tone. There's this sense, and one of the most interesting lyrics I think is, "All I know is bliss, my former enemy." Bliss, my former enemy. How is Bliss the former enemy?
It's supposed to be a reference to how, with the first album, everything was supposed to be blissful and cheerful and energetic.
Yes.
And now that, like, I move past that subject, it's like, well, now all of those songs feel harmful or something in a way, right? Because of the context that, ending a relationship, all those songs being about that. And it just kind of makes it seem like, well, shoot, now I can't really go back to those songs which were supposed to provide so much joy and happiness for me. They're now my enemy. But then regaining a new sense of bliss, a more authentic sense of bliss with a new partnership. And so that's kind of the premise of that line is like bliss as my former enemy, but now truly getting to feel it.
I think that already comes through in Chardonnay Chalet as well.
Yeah, I love that one. It's so fun.
It's kind of celebrating things not going to plan.
Oh, yeah.
My click-clack is not working. Patrick contains a faulty wire. Alma's amp is stuck on mute.
All just stuff that happened to us at a show.
I was interested in the genesis of that song. And these things that could just be... They could plague you as like, oh, that's so agitating.
Yeah.
Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
Instead, it is turned into one of my favorite songs and celebrated.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
Well, it was just like a really weird event that we had where it was for Big Turn Music Festival, which we love Big Turn. Like, that is such a fun festival. Kim, our performance artist, I play bass in their band, and so we're going to be going down there. Kim. We might be changing the name a little bit, tweaking it here and there, but right now it's KYM. I'm currently producing their album, and so that's really been so fun to work on. But we were playing Big Turn last year, and last February, and my foot pedals, my guitar pedals, just like stopped working, so I couldn't tune my guitar. I was too nervous to try to do it by ear. So I just like put the guitar down. I was like, never mind, I'm not playing. So poor Alma had to like play all of their parts, just like entirely as the lead guitarist without any guitar backup. They did fantastic. Everyone like totally did fantastic without having me playing guitar. And I was like, oh, I don't need to do this. But then Patrick's synth stopped working after the first song. We couldn't figure out why. He had taken it to get repaired, and I think like maybe there was just like another underlying issue that we didn't know about. Alma's amp fell off of a cart and got like the switch that was on and off for mute got turned off. So the mute switch was permanently on.
And this was all
one show, yeah.
And it's
so
Big Turn music
and we were one of the like headlining show spots for it. And so we were just all kind of said, you know what, fuck it, let's just have some fun. And I was very nervous going into it because like all these things were going on. I was like, I really wanted to just go all out with it. We had 2 different performance artists. We had Larry Wish, Adam was doing it, and we had Ivan Cunningham. Those 2 are doing performance art stuff since Joni and Kim couldn't make it.
Wow.
But so we do that show, and we're just like, oh my gosh, okay, we got all of like our fun energy out. We still like danced around and moved and did all that, but it was like really chaotic. We also awkwardly did a cover of a B-52 song to bring them back, where the whole band had to do. It was an unknown, not totally known one, that Song for a Future Generation, where they're essentially just introducing themselves, and like the ending line after each time is "Let's meet and have a baby now." So it's like really awkward and funny to get all of the boys doing that in the band. So like half the bar was just like, huh? Coming over, you're like, what the hell are they doing? But so we had like just like a lot of weird mishaps with the show. We go to this Airbnb that we were staying at for the night, and it was just filled to the brim with wine mom cursive language and like, I mean like what I guess I would consider like alcoholism. Right. So it was just like things like, don't talk to me till I've had my whole bottle of Chardonnay. I can't hear my kids, I'm hearing my wine thoughts. Like that type of thoughts, or like things in there. And then like a lot of like imagery of Bigfoot in stilettos, which was like kind of wild. But like it was just so goofy. So we were just like, it was a weird show, a weird place to stay at. So we were just like up until like 5 or 6 a.m. because we were just like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Did you write this song there?
No, that would have been super fun. But I wrote it like probably a month afterward. Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's in that song where, as a contrast with Meeting with Ease. Let's meet and have a baby. It was a B-52 song, yeah. So on the one hand, then I'm met with ease. This idea of like meeting, we were talking about like the encounter, like your date with your fiance.
There you go.
and the responsivity, the co-creativity. Yes, green lights.
Yeah.
Lots of yes, and on the one hand, connection, meeting with ease. On the other hand, chasing the dream only to suffer.
Yeah.
So the song, which is celebrating things going wrong, is also acknowledging that it's very easy to get stuck in the mode of, okay, this is the path, this is the way that things have to go, this is what I'm committed to. And then that leads to suffering because there's a kind of lack of ability to be responsive.
Yeah.
I find that interesting to relate to in Pendulum of Appreciation. In Pendulum of Appreciation, I've got some sinning left to do. For me, sin is just, it has to do with missing the mark.
Yeah, doesn't it?
As humans, we're very prone to feelings of shame and guilt whenever we sense that things are not going right. I've fallen short of the mark, I've missed the mark. An awareness of kind of lapsing. I'm supposed to be committed to cheerfulness, but all of that's gone wrong, and now sadness is my default mode. This isn't going right. I really like how you playfully, but also seriously, engage with these instances of lapsing, the sense of lapsing or things not going right, but instead of feeling guilty, why do we find ways to feel so guilty for our instincts? There's just a being with and a celebrating. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. It's like in thinking about Pendulum of Appreciation, I've got some sinning left to do, and just like essentially that just means fumbling, right? Like I've still got a lot to figure out.
Yeah.
And then tying it back into luck and non-autonomy, which we usually don't perform that one because it's like kind of hard for my range, but I really love it. It's a very ABBA, very if it wasn't for the Nights type song. But the why do we find ways to feel so guilty of our instincts is kind of just reflecting on queer love, like up until even just like a few years ago. It's like there's still shame associated with that culturally. And so finding ways to break through that, finding ways to, you know, as it's saying in Pendulum of Appreciation, like sin yourself to like becoming a better person, right? You're just figuring it out along the way. Those are kind of like really like the themes that are tying into that, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. Something you said about the previous record in our previous interview, the day that you met your fiance,
a magical day,
was that you intended it to be, and it wound up being like a recharging station. You said there's so much violence in the world, and but you wanted that record to provide respite. And you were reflecting on burnout and the risk of exhausting oneself, and it being okay and necessary to stop, to heal, to celebrate.
Yeah.
So if the previous record was a recharging station, what would you say that Heaven is a Silent Disco is?
A casino of emotion. No, it's like where you just start spending all of your like emotion and fun on it and energy. And yeah, I don't know. I still think of it as a place of respite because it is still supposed to kind of take you out of this world and let you explore, you know, joy and play and everything like that. Because I mean, when you think about it, the world has definitely changed a lot in the last couple of years since we last did an interview, but there's still a need for rest because who does it help if you're constantly at 5% battery all the time, right? Doesn't really help anyone. So you do have to take moments for yourself. And joy is a really radical emotion and a very radical feeling.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very foolish to feel like the only way to truly feel empathy and understanding for the world is to take on the suffering of the world. You have to do that because we're all in this together, but you do have to also take care of yourself at the same time because again, who does it help if you're constantly at 0%? So yeah, having this band be kind of like an oasis of emotion and safety and fun and playfulness is really exciting. I think that's a really cool thing to do. I'd love to see more of it and still have people recognizing what needs to be done for the world to be a better and safer place for people.
And of course, you will do that with, we will continue doing that, particularly with this third record. Do you have anything that you would like, as we come to an end, is there anything on the horizon that you would like to foreground, any upcoming shows?
Yeah. We have, we've got a show coming up on February 24th at 331.
Which day of the week is that?
That's going to be a Saturday.
Oh, excellent.
Finally, yeah, Saturdays are so fun at 331. Every day is so fun at 331. We get to do a radio appearance in St. Cloud in March. We're going to be going out to Milwaukee for a festival in April that's just yet to be announced. That's going to be really fun. Otherwise, we are going to be releasing another Halloween EP. We always do these Halloween shows where like my vocal melodies stay the same, but the instruments underneath do a lot of these like really weird atonal things that still harmonize with the vocals. So it's just like super freak show.
I remember you doing one at the Kitty Cat Club.
You got to see that. That's right.
Was that the first one?
That was the first one we ever did of that. That was really wild.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was super fun. So we had 4 or 5 songs then. We've got another 4 or 5 songs now. So we'll be recording an EP of that. We're recording our 3rd album intermittently here. You know, we'll be getting more writing done as we go along. But yeah, just a lot of fun stuff. We're really excited to see more local bands now that we're not so like hunkered down mixing and everything like that. All of our time can be spent giving back to the community that's been so supportive. Yeah.
Excellent. And just like you went on your date right before the previous interview, you're about to go on vacation.
Yeah,
So
I'm literally about to go on a vacation right after this.
A restful and playful vacation.
Thank you. It'll be warmer than here. That's all I'll say.
Thank you very much indeed for
Thanks
coming
so
in
much,
today.
Simon.
I'm excited for everything that's to come in the future. Hopefully, please come back when the third record is coming out. And in the meantime, thank you for going on this journey with us today, viewers. Welcome to the new season of Back to the City. We'll be back next Thursday at 10 p.m. See you then.